Yeah, 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 yeah.
Don't just make your fucking beats.
I'm about my game. Live by the rules, we don't play the same. That's on my grade, that's on my name. I'm saying, I'm about my paper, about my game. I'm about my game.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. We're here once again with another episode of College Football Now, and we're talking ACC football. That is the Atlantic Coastal Conference, for those who are not aware. And I mean, in the ACC, man, the 2025 to 2026 season was really something to wonder. Like, it was a beholden wonder. I mean, we saw fall-offs. We saw Bill Belichick's introduction to college football as a head coach, which went interestingly. We saw a team that was, near the top in Syracuse go to the very bottom. SMU, a team that came up from the American Football Conference, they continue to look great. And we had an obviously surprise conference championship winner in Duke. But before we get into all of that and we go back and we go forward, make sure you're hitting that like button if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter/X. If you're watching it on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button as well. It helps make us want to keep doing this show, and we keep trying to give you guys the best content that we can give you. And if you're watching on Facebook, click that like button, share it to your friends, and you can even click on our profile page, hit that like button as well, and make sure you guys follow us too. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're watching on Twitter /X, we are on at League Winners FB. I always add the in, it's just to have it. At League Winners FB for football. That's our primary account. Make sure you give us a follow, share that, retweet it. And this is a live show, so if you do have comments, please sure to make them. Bring them down, and I'll get to them while we're doing the show. And if you do comments and you watch us after the day after for the audio-only broadcast, you can leave a comment there, and we'll get back to you guys within 24 to 48 hours. We try to keep you guys happy and do what we're doing best. And my name, like I said before, it's Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. So, yeah, I mean, we got to kind of talk about the craziness. If we're talking about the ACC, and we have to talk about the rules for the conference championship game. At some point, they have to make it where, it's more basic like the other conferences. Because I think the ACC was the only one where we saw an insane scenario where the teams with the best overall records didn't play each other in the conference championship game. And I don't personally, if we're talking best of the best, like I'm an underdog guy. I am truly an underdog guy. Seeing Duke knock out 4 straight wins, including, getting to the conference championship game and winning that game to become conference champions, that's a fantastic story. I don't want to take anything away from them specifically. But when we're talking about the best of the best in a conference championship game, you expect to see teams with the most wins and losses kind of take over there. I mean, at least that's what you'd want to think, right? That's what you would assume. You know what I'm saying? Seeing Duke get into that game against Virginia was peak insanity, peak ACC insanity, which is, I mean, kind of what was the theme this year, right? I mean, we see a Cal team start a true freshman in Jaron Sage, Sungapula Jaron Cave, Sungapula see him get to his meteoric rise as a true freshman. Like, that's insane. And then that team starts to sputter down the road until head coach Justin Wilcox ended up actually getting fired. And then that team ended up going 7-6, still positive. I mean, that's kind of, Justin Wilcox's mantra. He's always been about a 500 guy. But even, behind them finishing with the same conference record, same overall, was Clemson. Clemson was a team that many people had, including myself and many other people at the ACC kickoff, the big media event during July of this past year. They had Clemson winning this game, or at least being in the conference championship game. And seeing that fall off started with the game against Syracuse, right? You have Steve Angeli playing out of his mind, and then he manages to tear his Achilles, which for a young player like that, that's something that you never want to see have happen, right? You don't want to see anybody tear their Achilles, especially young athletes. It's such a derailment to somebody's career. But anyway, we'll talk about that later with Dan Tortora as he comes on the show at 9:00 Eastern time. Stay tuned for that. That'll be a great one. But seeing that Steve Angeli and that team beat that Clemson team, that high-ranked Clemson team that everybody thought, I mean, that was a surprise. And them holding on, seeing what happened with the Ricky Collins saga and everything that happened in Syracuse makes that win even crazier, like just looking back at the season. But then see Clemson kind of stumble, and they ended up regaining their balance a little bit, finishing 7-6 as well. And then when you have NC State, Louisville, those are kind of the teams that everybody kind of, doesn't really pay too much attention to, and they consistently finish with good win-loss records at the end of the year. Louisville obviously ended up beating James Madison, one of the few losses that James Madison had, who they ended up going to the college football playoff. And now I know they lost to Oregon in that game. Also, I want to make a note of that game, and I got a lot of slack for this when the game was happening. Was the fact that James Madison was playing two quarterbacks in that contest. They were playing Matthew Sluka, the Holy Cross. He was at Holy Cross at one point. The transfer came in, and then we had Alonzo Barnett, the third, who was recovering from an ACL injury of his own. So they were Coach Bob Chesney was kind of using these two quarterback system to make sure that he wasn't overloading Alonzo Barnett while he was playing, and that way it kind of kept JMU competitive, slowly got Barnett into the flow of things, which I think really helped out during the end of the season. Now, do I think that it was the right decision? Who knows? In retrospect, maybe that loss significantly hurt JMU. And if they did beat Louisville, maybe they had maybe things change. Maybe they have a higher seed. They find themselves in a run. But hindsight's always 20/20, right? But Louisville ended up winning that game. That's still a game that, hey, those guys went to the college football playoff. That's a great mark to have. But I do like there's so many great stories like SMU that was completely that was a team that played in the conference championship game last year, stumbled a little bit out of the gate again with TCU and Baylor losses, but that's another team that just bounced back. And then once they bounced back, they ended up finishing strong yet again, finishing 9-4. And then I do want to quickly talk about the Pitt Panthers, who they continue to find freshman success, and then they continue to completely botch it. It's kind of a characteristic at this point of head coach Narduzzi, because I don't know any other football team that can have that kind of success, right? With freshmen, mind you, and then not be able to adjust once teams start to get grasps of what they're seeing from you as a football team. That's something that you never really want to see have happen. But with Narduzzi, it's not happening back-to-back years. They had Holstein last year, who was a freshman, and he went fantastically good. I mean, their last win was actually a game that I was at, and it was against Syracuse, and they had a massive game. I think it was like a 5 or 6 interception game against Kyle McCord, who's now obviously in the NFL. And then after that, they lost every single game. Now you go, hit the button, fast forward, you go to 2025, right? And then you see them start off fast yet again. We're getting a lot of, from Mason Heinschel, another freshman quarterback. And, they're having some issues there with some injuries with Desmond Reed and some other stuff are going on with that team. Some injuries with Kyle Lewis as well, which I think that his injury was a little bit worse than what they ever let on. I don't think they really let people know what was happening with Kyle Lewis, but I'll just keep that, I'll leave that as it is right now. I think that's, story for another day. But with that being said, Pitt finds a way yet again to collapse during the end of the season. They had a chance. I mean, talk about a massive flub is Narduzzi saying that the game against Notre Dame didn't matter. And then they got blown out in that game. That was a game that College Game Day showed up to, and it didn't matter. That's horrible coaching. I know Narduzzi produces results with good win-loss records, but I don't think he's the guy that's ever going to get the Panthers over the hump, period. And then another team we can't talk about the ACC without the introduction of Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson, and all of that thing. But I do want to – I know I'm in the minority here. I truly know I'm in the minority. But I don't think their 4-8 record is really indicative of how that team performed overall. Last year was a 6-7 team. They weren't even a 500 team, and he blew up the roster completely. So he's starting from scratch, bringing in players that he wants to bring in. And I think that expecting a winning season automatically in a P4 conference for a coach that's never coached college football, that's asking a lot. And then we saw that happen with the 4-8 record there. That's one of the craziest things. Just seeing Belichick in the college coaching field is just one of those things that you're just like in awe of, because you don't expect, an NFL legend like to take that step down, and then seeing him get flubbed in the NFL Hall of Fame, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother day. But I don't think you can talk about the ACC and the way that things have gone in this conference without mentioning the UNC Tar Heels and how they ended up performing. There's just fantastic storylines. Florida State to beating Alabama and then just going on a massive losing streak within their own conference, finishing with a 2-6 conference record. They didn't even get to 500. It's really going to be fascinating to see. I mean, if they've changed the head coach too. So it's going to be very fascinating to see if Norvell can get that team to where they want to be, because this is a guy, for those who are aware, if you were at the ACC kickoff, he was a guy that was just like a crazy ball of energy you wanted to run it through a wall with. But there's times where, as a coach, that can get old, especially if you start losing games. And I think that might have been a little bit of a product of what happened, especially with how many times FSU has come up short and come so close and then gotten hosed. But that's for a whole other argument. But having those issues, appear during his tenure, that definitely doesn't help them. But it's just so fascinating, and I can't wait to get into it. Actually, I didn't even recognize that I do have our first guest in the blue room right now, in the waiting room. We're going to talk some ACC college football. It is VP of the League Winners. It is Brandyn Pokrass. Brandyn, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm freaking exhausted, but I'm still here. But we love to see it. So we're talking ACC football. I wanted to get your because this is a crazy year. I guess we'll start, not from the beginning. Let's start from the most recent to the back, and that's I hit out at the beginning of the show, and that's the way that the ACC determines their conference championship attendees, I guess I call them, and just what were your thoughts of Duke not only getting in the game, but ended up defeating the Cavaliers?
It's the it's basically what the conference unfortunately brought upon itself. Obviously you have a good comparison in the American Conference, formerly known as the American Athletic Conference, where they use the college football playoff rankings to really help put the best basically matchup and teams together, right? ACC still adhering to a time where college football wasn't as crazy, which is saying something because the sport's always been a little bit crazy. And you end up with a scenario where the right teams win, the right teams lose, and all of a sudden you have a team that has 4 or 5 losses in the conference championship game, and they end up winning the conference championship, which paves the way for a second non-P4 conference in the Sun Belt, and a non-P4 team in JMU making the college football playoff. It's something that ACC has fixed as of now. It's something that they probably should have fixed heading in the last year, but the rules are the rules, and unfortunately, we're in an era of college football where everyone wants to keep changing those rules and tinkering with those rules and tinkering with, the TV agreement rule. You could go through a laundry list of different things, right? But at the end of the day, the results were the results, and I'm fascinated to see how things shake now that the tiebreakers make more sense for the ACC.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like I said before, I truly love an underdog story, and I know Manny Diaz was pretty upset about the team not getting in the college football playoff because of them winning a P4 championship, and I know he has issues there. But at the same time, I mean, you got to win. You got to win the non-conference games too, man, if you want to get consideration in that. And
they also lost to Tulane.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm pretty sure. Looking at their schedule right now,
it was
right?
UConn and Tulane, and then there was a few other losses they shouldn't have had.
I mean, where did their season start? They obviously beat Elon. They lost to Illinois. They lost to Tulane. They beat NC State. They beat Syracuse. They beat Cal. They lost to Georgia Tech. They eked out the win against Clemson. They lost to UConn and allowed 37 points to UConn. They lost to Virginia. They narrowly beat UNC. That, if you recall, that was a very crazy game.
Yeah.
They beat Wake Forest, and then they lose to Virginia once again.
Yeah, it was kind of just, the whole thing was nuts. I mean, that UNC game was crazy because that was the back-to-back UNC games where they lost by like a last-second score. The other one was against Cal, which was a crazy play by, I believe it was Brent Dawson,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken. Which
the Paco punch.
Yeah. So I mean, that's gonna be that's just insanity too. So I mean, we'll talk about that. Actually, we might have an interview of that one coming up during the admission. But just saying. Now, I wanted to get your thoughts on what the year was like for you watching the ACC, and like what surprises, because there was a lot of surprises, right? I mean, Pittsburgh doing fantastic things with a freshman quarterback and then kind of falling off a cliff again. Wake Forest surprisingly finishing 9-4. UNC and the Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson thing. Syracuse, Steve Angeli going down with the injury, tanking their season. There was a lot of storylines out there. And obviously Miami playing in the national title game. There's a lot of storylines out there. Which one has been your favorite of the 2025-26 season in the ACC?
Just kind of looking at the records, one that I thought was potentially going to occur was Florida State. Obviously, they beat Alabama week 1. It looks like FSU is finally getting back on track. Not so much. They simply just did not have the season that they needed to. They obviously they lost a lot of games that they needed to win, and that's kind of putting lightly, but when you're dropping games to Stanford and you're dropping games to Clemson and only scoring 10 points against Clemson obviously figured some things out by the end of the year. That's not exactly ideal either, right? So, and honestly, having the version of Florida at that point of the season score 40 points and just essentially run it up on you, not really a good sign. That was one at the beginning where I'm like, maybe this is going to be the turnaround year for Norvell and Florida State. I really like the class that they've brought in 26. Yeah. According to 247 Sports, they are the number 2 overall class in the ACC, behind the next school I want to talk about, staying in the state of Florida. That is the University of Miami. I was not optimistic on Carson Beck at quarterback. I knew they had the talent. I knew that they had the talent on defense specifically. I just wasn't confident in Carson Beck, the quarterback, to win them the games in the key spots that Cam Ward had done for them just a year prior, which helped propel him to be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft to the Tennessee Titans. And you know what? Miami's defense really snuffed out a lot of that. You look at what they were able to do in that 2025 season. I mean, Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain and Jacoby Thomas, and just run down the damn list. And even guys that aren't in the draft that are coming back for the 2026 season. Team is stacked. And look, it just so happens that the Carson Beck thing played out. It just played out in a way that still allowed Miami to make the college football playoff. It just played out, hey, he just couldn't get you over the championship hump. That team just was good enough around him, whether it be Mawangoa on the offensive line or the freshman phenom of all freshman phenoms in Malachi Toney this season, who showed that even with how young he is, he's going to ball and he's going to be one of the best receivers in college football right off the bat, right? This is a team that, they beat Notre Dame. They handedly beat a USF team that was surging after beating what looked to be a very good Florida team at that point in time. They stomped that same Florida team out. They obviously dropped the game against Louisville, and they have that tough one against SMU. Rest of their schedule, though, they've ripped through it. And I think seeing Miami fully come to fruition is something that I'd been waiting for. It was like, all right, when's this finally all going to click? When's this finally all going to come together? And this is finally the year where I'm like, okay, Chris Paul took some steps as a clock manager. The offense executed in spots that they didn't the year prior and the year before that. The defense, I mean, once again, I could say every praise word under the sun for that Miami Hurricanes defense. That's how good it was. So that's really my main one, because we finally saw the hype match the production. And if I were to mention a second one, I think it's probably a tie between three different teams for different reasons. Wake Forest, you mentioned, with Dicker coming over from Washington State, I felt pretty good about the direction they were heading. Wake Forest should be on the upswing in an ACC conference that has a lot of turnover roster-wise and a lot of quarterback turnover, in the sense where I think things could be more open in the conference than it has been in past seasons. I think that Georgia Tech with Haynes King and that roster was very fun.
Yeah.
I think that they're establishing themselves as a program that's going to be a constant contender in the ACC. Who is the follow-up act to Haynes King? How do they replace Buster Faulkner, who left for the University of Florida? That's going to be fascinating. A name to keep an eye on that I am very closely watching, and is a guy we are both familiar with. We've talked about him. Cole Bergeron ends up at Georgia Tech. He ends up being a 4-star quarterback prospect in the 2026 class. One of my favorites in the class. He had obviously visited FAU. It's how I first got wind of him, seeing that he went on that visit. He was committed to Virginia Tech prior, decommits with the new staff. New staff brings in their guys, ends up at Georgia Tech. I'm very excited to see if he can compete for that job. But otherwise, I think Georgia Tech should be in a good spot once again in 2026. And they really did well in 2025. And the third team that I want to mention that's kind of tied for that third spot, Cal Berkeley. JKS is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It wasn't perfect every week. It wasn't amazing every week, but the flashes were there every week. And when he put it together for full games, Cal was deadly. I cannot tell you how many times, and he did this more than any other quarterback I watched in 2025, how many perfect bucket drop throws that kid unleashed that were dropped by the wide receivers.
Yeah.
I truly wonder what Cal's record would be if they held on to half of those throws. I mean, if you were on Twitter or Blue Sky during those games, it would be a travesty if you didn't find someone talking about JKS, if you didn't find someone talking about this freshman phenom. That's how good he was. And once again, he wasn't perfect. He wasn't the guy that made every right decision, but he was phenomenal as a freshman quarterback. And now they bring in the group that they have brought in, namely a guy that I'm sky high on in Ian Strong from Rutgers University. They are reloading that offense. Look out for Cal in 2026 on offense, because they were able to retain the freshman phenom who now goes into his second year as the starter, presumed starter, obviously, because we're not in spring ball yet. But it'd be a shock if he wasn't the quarterback for them. I am so excited to see what year 2 looks like for him with how good year 1 was.
Yeah, Jaron Calvé-Singleputele is honestly one of the better true freshmen that we have seen in college football, and that says a lot. I mean, he was helping Jacob DeJesus break Cal receiving records. And DeJesus, for those who are unaware, DeJesus is not a big guy. He is a slot receiver, true. And that's not to take anything away from him, but you just don't normally see that type of success from a guy who can really only play inside. He can't do too much outside. Nothing, like I said, not to take away from JDJ, but he's fantastic. He's also a fantastic returner too. But like just pointing out the success that JKS has had already in his very limited time, and how he gets to potentially work with a better staff around him. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how that development unfolds. I really like the point that you had about Miami too, because I think we've talked about this. I was not a huge Carson Beck guy either. He surprised me in a couple games, but then there were a couple games where I think Miami had to rely on him, and he wasn't able to throw them back into a game. Good game manager, but I think maybe with a different quarterback, they end up taking it further and end up securing that win. Who knows? Hindsight's always 20/20, right? Who knows how that could have wound up? But I do think that was great.
And not to interrupt you, I'd be remiss. They got Darian Menson now.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know how it took me this long to mention. They have Darian Menson, and for those of you who may not be familiar with Tulane football or Duke football, he has elevated both those programs to a very high level over the past 2 seasons. You're now getting a guy, and I would not go as far to call him Cam Ward, because Cam Ward did stuff on the college football field at the quarterback position that like 10 guys in the country can do at a given time. Right. We are not comparing him to that. But what I am going to say is he's much better than Carson Beck, and he's going to be very fun within that offense, and is going to have a lot of fun throwing the Malachi Tony and friends. Once again, it would be a genuine shock if Miami was not in college football playoff contention, and it would be a genuine shock if they don't make an appearance in the ACC championship.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Mensa's so good that Miami basically, skirted some stuff just to get him to go there. Let's just say that way. Let's just say Mensa already had a message out for Duke fans, and that message was very quickly removed. Not much later. That's how much Miami wanted him. That just goes to show how good he is. It also shows how crazy college football is right now. But we've hit on that so many times, and I'm sure we'll hit on it again. Yeah.
I also want to mention, alongside Ian Strong, who I've obviously being from the Northeast. Yeah. Us being from the Northeast, we've talked about a ton. Cal added Chase Hendricks at wide receiver. They added FIU's Michael Vrabis. They added Dorian Thomas from New Mexico, who our friend Daniel has plenty of familiarity covering out there. Yes. Scrolling through, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Adam Muhammad from Washington. Yeah. Phenomenal pickup at running back. You kind of get the point of what Cal set out to do. They added Cooper Perry from Oregon. They added, as I'm going through 247, Rico Walker from Purdue. And then in the high school recruiting level, they added not only tight end, number 13 tight end in the country, Tamain Purcell from Hawaii, and EJ Morgan, the number 84 wide receiver from Fresno, California. But they added the number 12 offensive tackle in the country in this class in Daniel McMorris. So if you are paying attention, you should notice a pattern here. Cal is investing heavily on the offensive side of the ball. I would be honestly shocked if Cal's offense isn't at the top, or at least in the top 2 or 3 in the ACC next year. It has to be. It simply has to be.
Yeah, Ron Rivera is not playing games. I mean, I saw him at the ACC kickoff when he was talking to people downstairs. This, for those who aren't aware, the upstairs was where the primary meeting rooms were, and then downstairs was like Radio Row, and there'd be coaches, general managers, etc. And Ron Rivera was there, and that man was not smiling ever. And it's not because he was in a bad mood; it's because he was very serious about what he's going to be doing to this football program. And I think he was very unhappy, obviously considering he's an alum, very unhappy with the way that program's been looked at in the past couple of years, where it's just getting zero respect, especially after the breakdown of the Pac and them going to the ACC. Them and Stanford have kind of been a joke in the same fashion that USC and Oregon have been considered from the Big Ten guys. But that's a whole different thing, because obviously the Oregon thing is not true because who was in the college football playoff this year. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, no, Cal's in really good hands. I think Ron Rivera is really going to do a great job getting there. And another program I want to talk about is obviously their rival, and I just talked about them a little bit. They had Frank Reich there at head coach at Stanford. Obviously, now he's back at the NFL level. But what are your thoughts about Andrew Luck going with, three head coaches in 3 years? That team, and while they're recruiting okay, they haven't really gotten too many massive names through the portal or the recruiting trail. Who knows what ends up happening at the quarterback position for them? What are your thoughts about Luck's tenure so far with the Cardinal? And do you think that they can surprise this year? Because I'm assuming they're going to be basement dwellers on media polling this year.
It all depends on what your expectation for Stanford is, right? It all depends where you're leveling at. Because when I think about Stanford, I'm thinking about a program that, I'm 24 years old. I turned 25 in July. Growing up, Stanford was one of those programs, whether it be Christian McCaffrey, who was just a genuine joy to watch on the football field, or Andrew Luck, one of the guys at the quarterback position that made me fall in love with the idea of playing quarterback and what that represents, right? Unfortunately, they lost that in the modern era of college football. And now with the prodigal son home, I don't think anyone expected this to be an overnight fix, right? You look at the overall recruiting classes, Stanford is number 51 overall in the country. They are their composite ranks 36. Their transfer rank was 110, right? If everything is clicking for that school, they should be able to compete with the best of the best, right? In terms of money and resources. The thing you run into at Stanford, and Andrew Luck, I'm pretty sure has talked about this. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. You have to deal with the fact that Stanford is one of the best academic schools in the entire country. Not every school in the country is one of the best schools academically in the country. Like, there is a reputation that surrounds Stanford. So I think when you look at that, seeing the fact that they still have landed the number 34 athlete in the country, the fact, and by the way, we're going off 247's rankings, the fact that they landed the number 32 wide receiver in Zion Robinson from Texas, a 91 ranking on 247. The fact that in the transfer portal, they've been able to add some interesting players, right? Obviously, nothing crazy. They have 7 guys, but a guy like a Davis Warren, you talk about the quarterback position. If you get literally a floor out of him, that might be better than some of the guys that you were rolling with before, where the program was in a bad spot, right? You land an interior offensive lineman from Harvard in Aiden Kellstrom, Leroy Bryant from Washington, Davion Godley from Weber State. There we go. God bless hyperlinks, right? Nico Brown. Nico Brown's probably one that really stands out to me from Yale, a very productive Ivy League wide receiver. But you're kind of getting the idea that, okay, let's look at it from a number perspective. 7 transfers, 17 recruits with the letter of intent signed, 6 early enrollees. It's obvious what this is going to be, to me, at least. This is going to be a program that focuses on player development. Now, that's kind of crazy in this era of college football, right? We are in the transfer portal era. We are in an era where when guys have success, there is money and offers on the table for them to go elsewhere. I think what Stanford is banking on, and why I'm very interested, not going to use the word excited, not going to use the word pessimistic. We're going to play it neutral down the middle here. The reason I am interested is because what does this next stage of development look like for Stanford? What does Tavia Pritchard's program, Andrew Luck's program, look like when they are in a lockstep, when they are working together, when they do not have a head coach that knows he's only there for a season? What does the quarterback development look like? How are the skill players improving from week 1 to the end of the season? Because when we talk about Stanford, the reputation that Stanford has, what it means to go to Stanford, and how different it is trying to get guys into Stanford compared to other schools, maybe so different that the only comparison could be something like an Ivy or a military academy.
Right.
You need to see that process play out. You need to see, what does this thing look like on the field? What does it look like from the spring, then into the summer, and then finally arriving at the fall? Because until we have that, I'm not going to throw stones and be like, yeah, they're going to be basement dwellers. Nobody thought Indiana was going to turn things around under Kurt Signetti. And no, it's not a one-to-one comparison in the slightest. And I hope you're not comparing Indiana to Stanford. But what I am saying is that this is a program that I think has the finances, the funding, and the investment from the right people at the right times where they can turn things around. And I want to see that process play out. And I think it is going to happen that way. Because Stanford isn't going to fire Andrew Luck. Not right now, not next year, and I don't think 3 years from now. So I think there is going to be some runway for this, for Luck to get this program in a better position. I'm really interested to see what this year brings, because who knows what that first step looks like. But I really do think it's a foundational year where they do need to show some things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm going to hit a point too, is that the ACC is probably like the craziest conference in terms of parity right now. I mean, Duke, while Duke's been good in past years, nobody expected them to get to the ACC championship game. Nobody expected Virginia to even come close to doing as well as they did. They go in 11-3. Most of the media had them in the bottom half of the conference during the preseason rankings. Same with Cal, who finished 7-6. I mean, Georgia Tech's been consistently, like a 9-win school team. Same with NC State, been up there, and Louisville as well. And now we have Wake Forest, that another team that nobody really expected to do good this season, and now they did good. So if there's a team that could really, step up, I mean, it is Stanford in the way that they have a clear vision of what he wants. Whether or not, it comes this year remains to be seen. But like you said, if you're expecting Stanford to pull an instant turnaround, you're kind of expecting a little too much. Anything more better than what they did this past year, which, I mean, they even started getting on a little bit of a run at some point. They went 3-5 in the conference, which isn't terrible. You know what I mean? And they beat Florida State. So just seeing the way that has shaken up, ACC is an interesting one, man. And that doesn't even include Virginia Tech. That's going to be having a whole different kind of a hand this upcoming season. But I do want to quickly talk to you about UNC, and what were your thoughts about Bill Belichick in his first year in college football? What do you think about the stuff going on with him, obviously Jordan Hudson, the interesting stuff with Pablo Torre that he was able to find regarding some of the situations revolving the Tar Heels football team and general manager, and just what were your thoughts about UNC this year under Bill Belichick's first year as head coach?
This isn't something that's going to work in my eyes, right? And I know that UNC's recruiting class is solid, right? By all standings, right? I mean, you can make an argument that it's more than solid. Whether you look at the top 25 overall ranking at number 21, or you look at some of the guys that they brought in, immediately the fact that they have, what's this number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 4-stars, right? You could make an argument that in a world where talent is so important in a sport, that UNC just getting an influx of guys is going to be important and help right things. I just have no confidence in this operation, right?
Yeah.
What steps and we're talking about late stage Bill Belichick. We're not talking peak of his powers. This guy can shut offenses down at a whim. Like we saw, we are very familiar with the AFC East. We saw what the end of the Belichick era looked like in New England post Tom Brady, right? He lost his fastball, and it happens. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you lose your fastball, you lose your fastball. And for better and for worse, the college game is a lot different than the NFL. The tempo, the pace, the schemes that you run at the NFL level might not work at the college level. You're dealing with kids instead of professional athletes who are fully developed and at the peak of their powers. Right? You have guys that are solely focused on football compared to kids that still have to go to class, right? That are still working toward their degrees. I just don't think that, and I could easily be proven wrong here. I don't think Bill Belichick is going to make the necessary adjustments from year 1 to year 2 to put UNC in a spot to compete. Now, do they maybe improve their win total from wherever it was at to be bowl eligible or maybe slightly above bowl eligible? Sure. But is that what UNC wants? Is that what you brought Bill Belichick in for? I just don't think that the ceiling that a lot of people thought this could bring is going to play out. And we're not even talking about the off-field stuff, which is just part of my French, a complete shit show. Complete and utter shit show in so many different ways and a distraction for so many different people. In terms of the on-field stuff, I just don't think it's going to work. And if that off-field stuff starts leaking into the on-field stuff again, like it probably will, it's not going to work here. And I think he'll be gone by the end of year 2.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The Jordan Hudson thing, I've got to experience it, and the presence is beyond. It's just very interesting. I'll say that. It's not like anything you really see from another media room from a football team. It's very interesting. Also very interesting because, I mean, we've seen Bill Belichick's demeanor before, and seems like a different guy, more or less, at least when he talks to media that isn't, his regulars. It seems very different and much more approachable, which I thought was honestly very weird coming from Bill Belichick, who has always kind of had a hardened demeanor when talking to other media members. But I guess that's kind of his eye-opening experience from the college football level in a whole different sense of things. But I do think it's fascinating because I talked to you about this personally, but I was never a huge fan of Gio Lopez as the starting quarterback for UNC. He's a great guy. Like, I don't want that to get, misconstrued by any means. He's a fantastic guy. He's very nice. He's very smart. I just didn't think that he meshed with what they wanted to get done offensively. They added Taron Dickens from, I think it's Western Carolina, and he was fantastic at Western Carolina, but that's also a whole different level of competition. And you're talking about a player who really only had 1 year of that high level performance at Western Carolina. He was there for 2 or 3 years, something along those lines. So they'll have like some time to play with him a little bit from a development standpoint. But is that enough? Is he enough? Is the rest of that quarterback room enough? Because the rest of that quarterback room, there's a reason Gio Lopez was starting. And there's a reason why they didn't pull him when he was going through a very big struggle throughout the season, when you might have seen other programs pull their quarterback if they had the depth behind it. We didn't see that from UNC. So I'm interested to see how that ends up going. They do have a lot of big games this upcoming year, and there's talks about that program trying to join the SEC with the Belichick hype. That's for a whole different story. We'll probably touch on that when the season comes around again. But I think that's insane. But I digress. The other interesting thing to me, though, I did want to talk to you about this too before we kind of get out of here is Pitt, right? Because Pitt.
Oh, you don't want to talk about Syracuse?
I'll have Tortora on. I'll have Tortora on to talk about the mess that was the Syracuse Orange in 2025. Oh man, I'm not looking forward to that. What
is with you and messy football teams?
Yeah. Whether it was Florida Atlantic last year, or the New York Jets, or the Syracuse Orange after they had a 10-win season, you would think that You would think that some luck would find me, but hey, at least I got to cover, fun Navy and Army games, and some Delaware games were pretty fun. Other than the two Army, actually no, I watched an Army collapse week one. Yeah, against Tarleton State. Yeah, so it's been interesting. No, let's talk about some Pitt football before we get into the rival in the Syracuse Orange. Coach Narduzzi seems to have a way with freshman quarterback until the second half of the season happens, and then everything kind of implodes. We saw it last year with Holstein, and I mean he looked fantastic last year. And then after the game, ironically, when they faced Syracuse and they had like 7 interceptions or whatever that crazy game was. They lost every single game after that. They end up benching him for Mason Heinschel, who by all reports, Heinschel looked better than Holstein for a while. And that announcement was kind of delayed. He looks fantastic for the first half of the season. And then they kind of fall off a cliff. You've overheard some interesting conversations. I've overheard some interesting stuff regarding that coaching staff, but are you just when is enough? And is Narduzzi the guy who can take Pitt to that like championship level?
I mean, it's a tough one because I feel like
it's close.
It's tough because Pitt's always for the past few seasons had, I mean, not few, like the distant past, like they've been in contention. Yeah. Right? They've been in the mix. Like that Notre Dame game was the height of the powers for Pitt. Like they were right there because they were clicking at the right time. And like you said, Mason Heinschel balling out at the quarterback position after Eli Holstein struggled after he balled out the previous season. And then we kind of reached the same point where and it's not, I don't know if it's necessarily a knock or not. It probably should be taken as one. It feels like teams catch up with Pitt. Like it feels like Pitt gets off to these good starts, feels like their guys are playing really well and they're executing and they're doing everything at a high level. Then it feels like a defense catches up to them. And then once one defense figures it out, then the next one figures it out. And then the one following that figures it out. And so on and so forth. By the time you reach the bowl game where they're playing East Carolina is flying. And they are jumping routes. And they are just getting after the quarterback to a dizzying extent. They had Heinschel in a blender to start off that game. And he made some strides and some throws over the course of the game to battle back. But it truly felt like East Carolina got that leg up on them first, which with the talent that Pitt consistently has on their roster and the talent that they're bringing in once again, that's something that I feel like shouldn't happen. It feels like, especially in this day and age, Pitt is in a perfect location, has the resources, and has everything of the making to be a premier college football program in the state of Pennsylvania, if not challenging Penn State for that title, considering all the turmoil and the questions surrounding Penn State. That door can be open. So to circle back to your main point, is Narduzzi the guy? I don't think so. I don't think he's the guy to get them over the hump. Unless he finally shows an ability to adjust and find a way to keep the success flowing, even when a team adjusts to what is being successful, I don't see it happening. And look, we could go through this process again. Pitt has, as an early enrollee, the number 13 quarterback in the country, according to 247 Sports, in Corey Daly, a 6'6.5" quarterback. They have other guys that are talented at the positions that Pitt has been very successful at, namely Miami Northwestern's Desmond Johnson. That Pitt roster has been a pipeline for the linebacker spot. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets on the field late in the year or in the middle of the year for the Panthers, especially considering that he's an early enrollee. The talent is there for them. They did solid in the transfer portal. I just don't know. I really don't know if they have the coaching staff there or the head coach there, to be more specific, to really get over that hurdle. Now, once again, similar to a previous conversation that we had, I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love to have Pitt finally get over the hump. Why can't they pull a Virginia? Why can't the coach that everyone's kind of backing out on take Pitt all the way to the ACC championship game? Why can't that happen? It can. I just, based on what I've seen, based on what we've seen from Eli Holstein falling apart to Heinschel falling apart in the back half of the season, there's a reason that keeps happening. There's a reason that Pitt keeps having these struggles. And after enough time, one time's a coincidence, 2 times a pattern, 3 times, the saying from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the comments that he had against Notre Dame, especially when that game mattered so much to the grand scheme of the football team. I mean, they had College Game Day go there. That's the first time they've been there in a while. The whole community was very excited about that game. And then you have the head coach just come out and just say, it's not an important game. It doesn't matter to us. I think that was the wrong message at the wrong time. I understand why he said it.
From a literal sense, he wasn't wrong. But what are you sending vibe-wise in the locker room, the culture, and how does that affect you in a game that matters the following week? As I pull it up, against Miami, well, if you guys followed along, didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
Because, well, it wasn't technically the following game. Because they boat raced Georgia Tech, and then they got boat raced by Miami to the point where Pitt only scored 7 points in the game.
Yeah, embarrassing game. And it was 2 embarrassing showings in probably the 2 biggest games they had. Not to say that the Georgia Tech game wasn't still massive, but there were deficiencies within that Tech team that we knew that Pitt could really have success against. And I mean, obviously against 2 teams that are fantastic. I mean, there was such an issue against Notre Dame that their head coach basically stiffed Narduzzi in the post game handshake because he was acting like a jerk throughout the game, just being very petty. Similar issues against Miami where he's just trying to delay the inevitable in probably the worst way. It's like an unspoken word among coaches. You don't do certain things to kind of piss each other off. I mean, if you want to be petty, sure. As a Jets fan, Bill Belichick's done that plenty of times to the New York Jets, so I personally am used to that. But it's usually the other way around. It's not the team that's losing being incredibly petty, but more so the team that is winning. And to have it happen against 2 teams that are also like rivals, right? Like Pitt likes to play Notre Dame quite a bit, and Pitt, I mean, obviously conference rival, and the Miami Hurricanes, they play each other quite a bit. They face each other in massive games. Seeing Narduzzi kind of fall off that way and the comments that he was making and just how he was acting, I was surprised that a move wasn't made. But considering how many coaches got fired this past year, I kind of see why a move wasn't made at the same time.
Well, it also doesn't help that in the post-game press conference after your bowl game that you blame the linebacker that legitimately kept you in the game for blowing the assignment, and said linebacker then transfers to Texas.
Yeah, not great because that linebacker is a pretty good linebacker. So that's going to be a big loss for Pitt. I mean, they do have some guys coming in that you've touched on. That'll be fascinating. Before I let you go, there's one last team I do want to talk about, and that's Virginia Tech, who obviously has a new head coach in James Franklin, former Penn State head coach. They also retained Tech's former head coach, who joins the coaching staff, if I'm not too mistaken, because he was actually friends and basically pitched the job to James, which that was just, I mean, if that doesn't speak about the kind of culture that area has, Virginia Tech is just great people. The Hokies are fantastic as an organization. What are your thoughts about them? I mean, a lot of Penn State players ended up transferring to Virginia Tech once that was announced. A lot of recruits ended up, decommitting and going to Tech now. And obviously he goes into a conference that is arguably lesser than the Big Ten, at least from a general consensus standpoint. What are your thoughts on the James Franklin-led Hokies entering 2026?
I mean, if everything clicks, there's no reason they can't compete for the championship in year one. Like that's maybe that's a hot take. I don't think there's any reason they can't compete for the ACC championship in year one. What Franklin did for Penn State truly shouldn't go unnoticed. The way he turned around that program and turned Penn State into what its reputation is now can't go unnoticed. Now, he did have his faults. He did have his struggles. I'm very intrigued in how he's going to handle the quarterback development because it felt like every year that was kind of the bugaboo for Penn State, that or the wide receiver spot. How he attacks that is probably going to be the difference in the ceiling for the Nittany Lions. I just see no reason that Virginia Tech shouldn't come right out of the gate with the talent they added and the coach they added and win and not win 7, 8, maybe even 9 games. Right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like 7 will be the absolute floor for them, especially in an ACC that's constantly in flux. Like you're bringing. I want to say this the right way, and I think this is the best way to say it. You're bringing a steadying presence into a conference full of chaos. Now, will that chaos affect Franklin? I'm excited to find out. But from a general overview sense, looking at the sheer amount of talent they brought in, once again, a lot of guys from Penn State, a very successful program, both in the portal and from the high school ranks. I think he could have Virginia Tech up and rolling pretty quickly. I'm very confident in Franklin's ability to establish a floor as a head coach. I'm uncertain about a ceiling, but quite frankly, Virginia Tech has wanted a floor for a very long time. That's why you hire James Franklin. You want a guy to steady your program, to get it on the right track, and to give you a floor where you're winning probably 8, 9, 10 games every single year. And I think he can do that in the ACC. And I really don't think people should write off him doing that in year one, right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I mean, it speaks volumes about what he did, and I think it's kind of short-sighted that the program Penn State chose to get rid of him this season after a couple, a stumble.
They got lucky. They got lucky that they got Matt Campbell because that hiring process did not go the way they wanted it to go. They were not in a great spot, and they still ended up on a pretty damn good football coach.
Yes, yeah, they've kind of failed forward, which we've seen coaches do plenty of times. But we'll see if James Franklin's able to turn the Hokies around. I think they will. I think that culture was already good, and I think it's just going to continue to be good. And now they have a really good recruiter on top of it, and a lot of great coaching on that coaching staff to boot. So I'll be very fascinating to see what the Hokies do and the rest of the ACC conference entering 2026. But Brandon, before I get you out of here, my friend, let everybody know where they can find you out on your social media and everything.
As you can see, I'm at BPOC24. That is, on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, and I'm also on Blue Sky at Brandyn-Pokrass. Please check out my stuff on socials. I'm really excited for college football to get rolling again, and it's going to be a very fun 2026 season.
Yes, it is. I can't wait personally. It was great talking to you. As always, my friend. Thank God I didn't say the full word. That could have been bad. I'll bleep that out later. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. I'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
That was Brandyn Pokrass of the League Winners. We're going to bleep out. But I mean, by the time you hear this part, you're going to be like, what are they talking about? But there's going to be a little bleep. Nobody's going to notice, maybe. Wink. That was Brandyn Pokrass of the League Winners Vice President. You can find him at BPOK24 on X/Twitter, as well as on Instagram. Now, before I gave a little hint that we might see Mr. Paco punch Brent Austin himself in this showing, and that is because we got to talk to the Cal defensive back while we were at the 2026 Shrine Bowl. So if you haven't been already aware, usually we do college football prospects as we enter the new season, but before the draft, I thought it was a good idea to really do highlight some of the players going into the draft that we managed to talk to and extend their profile a little bit. And as you're watching this, please make sure this is a live show. So if you are watching, if you leave a comment, I will get to it no matter what. We're talking ACC college football right now. If you're watching on Facebook, please make sure to click that like button, click that share button, your friends and family, and you can click on our page and make sure to follow us. We do a lot of great content as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to click that like button. It's completely free to do so. It looks like this little thumbs up right I'm giving you right here, except it doesn't have the hand tattoo. But make sure you click that button. It helps us out. Click that subscribe button as well. It gives us the incentive to keep wanting to talk college football with you all. And it does a great deal for us on our side as well. And if you're watching on X/Twitter, please make sure to click that like button. Share it to your friends. Maybe they'll like it. You never know who loves college football and just college sports in general. I know I do, and I know many of my friends do as well. And feel free to leave a comment. Like I said, we will get to all comments live. If you comment after the show, when this one's audio only, give us 24, 48 hours. We will always make sure to get back to you. And that is a guarantee. I do notice that we're going to pause on the Brent Austin interview. I'll have that after I have my good friend on this show right here. But you know him, he recently covered the college football title game. He covers a lot of stuff within the Syracuse area, but not just Syracuse. He does it national wide. He's been a broadcaster for over 20 years. You can find him from, I believe it's 9 to 11, Monday through Friday at Wake Up Call DT. You can find him at Call DT on X/Twitter. It is my great friend, Daniel Tortora. Daniel, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm sorry. Hair and makeup took a little bit longer today.
Did I get the 9 to 11 right?
You did, yeah.
Okay. I didn't look at any of that.
No, I start at 9. I say end at 11, and that's so many lies. We usually go to like 12, 12:30, 1. So yeah, 9 to 11 is what we promise. 2 hours a morning, and typically go well beyond it, and that's because I love what I do, and I love giving my guests their space to kind of tell their story. So we say 2 hours, but commonly it's more.
Yeah, and speaking of loving things, love the shirt. For those who are listening audio only, Daniel has a Venom shirt on. I'm a massive Marvel fan, especially a Spider-Man. Oh, that's so sick. That is sick. And Venom personally is probably one of my favorite all-time Marvel characters. I have all of his first edition issues in the comic books. I have his entire run where he worked with the Punisher as well. So I'm a huge fan of that. I love that, Dan.
Yeah, the lethal protector. So
yes, sir. I love it. But I do want to talk about the ACC. I got done talking with Brandyn Pokrass, our VP here, about the ACC. What a wacky year it has been. Duke found themselves going against Virginia in the conference championship game. It wasn't by best overall record. It was by a very interesting scenario. That's since has been altered a bit. Can you just talk about what your thoughts were seeing Duke find their way into that? I mean, we've talked about it a little bit on your show actually with Shane Barrett, the kind of craziness of that. But for fans listening here, what were your thoughts on how that went down? The thoughts on how they determine who gets to be in the championship game and more.
Yeah, I spoke with the ACC during the college football playoff run and discussed with them the tiebreakers that they had, just how interesting and confusing this was. That Duke got in a 5-team tie. Yeah. They got into the championship against Virginia, and it wasn't because they won the games. It was that they had the toughest record so the teams in their conference, it was like the 4th tiebreaker, but they played the toughest schedule of all the teams that were tied for second place. And I asked the ACC, did they have to win those games? And they said no. So they didn't even have to win against the tough schedule. They just had to have a tougher schedule than other people and have the same record. But it was funny because when speaking with the ACC, they said, Dan, there's other conferences that have the same tiebreakers. And this could have happened in other high-profile conferences. It just so happened in ours. So people think like, this, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, oh, they think this is an ACC thing. It's not. So it could have happened elsewhere. But they said it's on the table, here in the spring to discuss some changes to their tie-breaking, criteria, and that it could change. And if it's agreed upon that they would move forward with some changes to it. But yes, it was confusing. It was strange. And head-to-head doesn't work in the tiebreaker of 3 or more teams unless they've all played each other.
Right.
Because there was a process of elimination where one team could knock out another team and so on and so forth. That would have left SMU and Georgia Tech, who didn't play each other, but they had a common opponent in Wake Forest. And so that would have been a determining factor, I believe. But that's not how they do it. It's how I kind of broke it down, but that's not how their current criteria did. So Duke got in despite having more losses because they had a tougher ACC schedule, which didn't have to do with wins or losses. So you could play the tougher teams and lose to them and still get in, which was confusing. But, you know, like the ACC told me, we're not the only conference that has this criteria. It just so happened that it played out here. So people think, oh, you know, this is an ACC thing. And that's not the case.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And then they ended up winning it. And then obviously Manny Diaz thought that Duke deserved to be in the college football playoff, because then that became a whole different issue that we've talked about the college football playoff a bit actually on this show too. But I do want to talk to you. I mean, we'll talk about Syracuse in a bit, because I mean, we've talked about that enough throughout the season. I don't know if we have to dig there quite yet. Yet. But I do want to talk to you about the rest of the ACC, because there's a lot of fascinating storylines. Obviously, Jaron Sungupulitele and Cal, great true freshman quarterback, leads them to a 7-6 record. Clemson and Dabo, they had their rough start. I mean, obviously, they lost to the aforementioned Syracuse. Then they battled back and end up finishing 7-6 themselves. Wake Forest, nobody really expected that team to finish with a 9-4 record. I mean, they pulled up some obvious upsets too. And then UNC with the Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson, I guess, drama we'll call. And that doesn't even include Miami getting to the national title game, and Pittsburgh with their freshman phenom for the second year in a row, and then collapsing in the second half of the season. I wanted to ask you, which storyline in the ACC was like the most interesting to you this year?
You know, I think it was Miami not fumbling. You know, they the last few years under Mario Cristobal, and then before that under Mark Richt, you know, they had an opportunity to make a college football playoff run, you know, make an ACC title run, and they would just lose down the stretch a game or two, and they would kind of fumble themselves out of it. And they didn't do it this time around. So, and my dog just, you know, opened.
I saw the dog. I was hoping it wasn't a ghost or something.
Yeah, my office is connected to my studio, and my dog is 9 pounds, but she opens my door like she's a 300-pound man. So, but yeah, that's her. What up, Lily? How we doing? So, but I mean, I think it was Miami not messing up, you know, to a point where they fell out of things, because I think they've been close. So credit to Mario Cristobal and his staff and the student athletes for, you know, holding serve and making sure that they only had 2 losses on the season. And so, I mean, if they were in the Big Ten and they had 2 losses, they would have been in no matter what. But I think Miami, that was a great storyline. I loved covering Miami, and I like talking to Mario Cristobal, and I had so much fun speaking with the guys from that team, be it Malachi Toney, you know, I love speaking with Ruben Bain Jr., high draft pick, in my opinion. And, you know, Akeem Mesidor, another high draft pick, in my opinion. And I mean, there was so many guys on that team. Carson Beck, you know, talking with him about his journey and his faith was really, really great. So I would say Miami sticks out to me for sure, because I was with them to the end. And then I would say other storylines, you know, North Carolina was interesting. And, you know, Bill Belichick, it's weird. It's like, if that was any other coach, they would have been like, fire him. And, you know, because it's Bill Belichick, it's like, well, you can't, because he's won a lot of titles in the NFL. So, you know, I think the Bill Belichick era in North Carolina is an interesting one. And I'm hoping for the best for this, you know, project that North Carolina has tested out for sure. So I think that's one I circled. Stanford was a confusing one. I really like speaking with Frank Reich, but I've never in 22 plus years of broadcasting have I had a school go, this is our coach, but not for real, just interim for this year. And no matter what he does, he's not going to be here next year, but he's here for now until we figure things out for the future. So he's our little like placeholder, kind of like a cardboard cutout, but not a person. And that was so weird and it was strange. But I genuinely enjoyed talking with Frank Reich. Like it had nothing to do with him. It could have been anybody in that job. It was just like, and what I mean by that, it was just weird to be like, this is our interim no matter what. And now he's the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. So I'm excited. I hope I cross paths with him again because I really like talking with him. And I didn't want essentially, I didn't want it to be 1 year in Stanford for him. That was weird to me. So that was a weird storyline. And then, I would say, Syracuse, for goodness sakes, Steve Angeli. So you and I know that out of the spring, there was this like Ricky Collins is the best and he's the starter.
Yeah.
And I said, and this had nothing to do with Ricky, I said, my gut tells me Fran will go get another quarterback if he deems one to be good enough to go get. And he went and got Steve after the spring. And I was like, okay. And then Steve ended up being the starter. And my response to that was when they said, well, Ricky was the starter and now Steve's the starter. And, Fran lied to us. And I was like, Ricky was the best option at the time, but now Steve is the better option of the bunch. And so I caution people to say, maybe Ricky was the best of not the best options. And that's why they went and got Steve. And it's no disrespect to Ricky. It's just kind of like, if Fran thought he had the guy, he wouldn't have gone and gotten Steve. And I think that was pretty clear. And I just thought, I felt bad for all the guys. I felt bad for the team. You kind of felt like, okay, maybe they're going to falter a bit without Steve Angeli based on how Ricky does. But that team just fell right off the radar. And that was really tough because I know the guys. And so, building relationships with a bunch of those guys, especially a bunch of the receivers on the team, that was hard for me because they're running routes and they're not getting the ball because the ball's not getting out. And, the offensive line struggled and the quarterback struggled and the team just seemed to lack leadership. Yeah. So that was a sad storyline. That was heartbreaking. And then, outside of those, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's like, Manny Diaz, I'm proud of him. I'm really excited that, he had a shot in Miami and it was short-lived. And then he went to Duke and Mike Elko was there and went back to Texas A&M. And so I think Mike Elko did a great job with Duke. I think Manny Diaz is doing a great job. I like that Duke is winning. That means something to the ACC. It means something to the pedigree of the ACC and to the portfolio. So I do like that. And dude, I love Georgia Tech. I'm a big fan of what, is being done at Georgia Tech. I love their head coach. I love Brent. I love that he's real. And I'm a big Haynes King fan. I know you got to speak with him, but when he stood up there at the podium and he said at the beginning of the season, and it's to hell with Georgia, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. And it was. And so I think, that's good. And Tony Elliott, Virginia's story to the top of the ACC. Yeah. That man was like, okay, were they going to fire him 2 years ago, last year, this year? And he just kept working. He believes in God. He has a strong faith. I love talking with him because it's always more than football to him. So I think honestly seeing the old Coastal Division rise, because that's Virginia, that's Duke, that's Georgia Tech, that's Miami. So that was awesome. And I think, SMU is one step out of being in the ACC title game. And Rhett Lashley is one of the guys I respect the most in the game on and off the field. So I would say, you asked me what storyline sticks out, and I can easily, like I did without any preparation, I just went to 5 different teams or so. And so there's a lot that stick out, but Syracuse, it got to the point where it was like mercy, it just was like, please. And it's hard, but it goes to show you. And listen, to the people that rip on Syracuse and Fran, I'm going to caution you and I'm going to remind you of something. When the Dallas Cowboys lost Troy Aikman, the season was over.
Yeah.
When the Packers lost Brett Favre, the season was over. Before Mac Jones, when the Niners don't have Brock Purdy, the season's over. When the Ravens don't have Lamar Jackson, they struggle like crazy. Yeah. So I just want to caution people that are like, well, why didn't Syracuse have a backup and they weren't prepared? And it's like, 9 times out of 10, the backup shows you why they're the backup, be it high school, college, pro. And I mean, look at Penn State, and how Drew Aller was struggling. And then without Drew Aller, they were struggling. And I mean, for goodness sakes, what would be Miami without Carson Beck? What would be Indiana without Fernando Mendoza? Is that a tie game because they don't have him barreling his way into the end zone on a 4th and 5 that he takes 12 yards to pay dirt? I mean, you can't criticize Syracuse for the lack of a backup quarterback without looking to the rest of the country and looking at history and saying that almost never does a backup quarterback play better than the starter.
Yeah, you'd be very hard pressed to find that, right? I mean, and this is the thing too, like, especially you mentioned Ricky Collins. Once we saw that he wasn't playing in that spring game, that should have been a red flag to people in general, And,
well, I got to break this story when I found out the news that he had injured his hand. I believe it was his thumb.
Yeah.
And I had actually gotten the news about that ahead of time and was able to break it. And of course, per Syracuse media, as always, my name was on nothing. That actually happened this week too. SportsCenter ended up carrying my interview with Kyan Anthony, and somebody that was filming it got the credit for it in the graphic, which was really interesting. But and I gave them an opportunity to right their ship, and they did not. But I'm not going to be a bitter broadcaster. I just have come. It's sad that I've come to terms with the fact that things are stolen so much. I just have to black it out. And the irony is the person that stole from you stole it. That's the person that just did it.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah. All right. I already know who it is. We'll keep that off record there. But that's not surprising. I guess I'll just say that. But yeah, to hit on your point.
Sad I have to come on to shows and be like, oh, I was the one that broke the story on Ricky. And then people are like, really? Because I saw it from here and here and here. And I'm like, well, I can tell you who told me. And if you knew my source, you'd be like, oh, yeah, then that probably was from you.
Yeah.
My sources are not, but to Kyan Anthony's credit, with all the misinformation that went out there, he reposted my interview and he said, appreciate you, brother. So I was like, he kind of low key was like,
right.
Dan's the one that interviewed me. So I appreciate Kyan for righting the ship there.
Yeah, not to get completely off track, but that Syracuse basketball has been very interesting to say the least, especially with Kyan's father and everything that's been going on with Coach Autry and everything. But to hit on your points, the Frank Reich thing with Stanford was so insane to me too, because obviously I was at the ACC kickoff as well, but then we talked to him after that too, and it was just he knew what he was getting into. But how do you relay that kind of message to college football kids who want to play going forward? Yeah,
it's like he's an NFL guy. He's been a head coach in the NFL. He is a respected name, in my opinion. So it's like it's great, but like. Never have I ever. It's weird. It's like I don't drink, but if I was playing a drinking game and we played Never Have I Ever, mine would be never have I ever had a head coach go, "Hey, I'm only here for a few months, no matter what happens." Like that. That when he stepped to the podium and that was the thing, it was like, "This is our interim head coach. He is just going to be an interim head coach. There's no plan for his future." I was like, "Who came up with this?" But at the same time, like it's Frank Reich. So It's like, this is confusing, but then selfishly, I'm like, well, I get to talk to Frank Reich. So this is cool. Like, I was really happy to talk with him, and I'm happy he's with the Jets. And I feel bad for him that the Jets traded most of their offensive capital. But I hope that there is a world where Derek Carr comes back to the NFL and is a Raider, and Fernando Mendoza could be a Jet. But I just hope that Frank Reich can pull off some magic with the Jets. But it was so weird to have that, because I like Troy Taylor, the guy that was a head coach before, and I love talking with him. And then he finished up, and then they're like, Frank Reich's our coach. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And they're like, for the season. And I was like, well, what if he does good? Like, what if he has a good season? So, I mean, yeah, it was just kind of, I don't know. I mean, 22 years and I've never seen it. And if I had a nickel for I've never seen or experienced this in 22 years, I'd have a mountain of nickels. So like, I think it was weird. I hope it works out for Stanford. But to your point, like if I was a student athlete and my family and I are making a decision and I'm 17 years old and you're like, hey, Dan, do you want to come play for Frank Reich? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And they're like, for 3 months. And I'm like, well, what about after that? They're like, he's gone. Be like, is he fired? No, he's just a placeholder. So like, he's just like work study or like, this is a temp job. It's weird. I've never seen like a temp job in college football like that. And I don't know. I mean, if it works, it works, but it doesn't make any sense. It's still like, I still sit there and I'm like, interim is like, if you do well, you stay. Then I was like, what if Stanford is smarter than everybody? And they're telling everyone it's interim. And it's like, so if he does bad, the fans will leave him alone because they don't think he's going to stay. And then if he does really well, you could just pull the tag off and say psych. But I don't know.
That's what I was thinking they were going to do too. Because like the way you were talking about that situation, it was like from a comedy sketch. You know what I mean? Like you're pitching it to the player and then like that's almost how it felt. But I mean,
like, how do you do a speech? You're like, hey, this is my vision. This is my mission. This is what I expect from my team. This is how we're going to practice. Some stuff's going to be the same that you've had. Some's going to be different because I'm your coach for now.
Dude, oh my God.
And it just felt, I don't know, like it kind of made you keep looking to who's going to, like, you know what I mean? Like if a Tonight Show host, like if Jimmy Kimmel came on the air and he's like, I'm your late night show host for right now. You would like be thinking who's coming up, like who's going to be the next guy. By the way, I don't watch late night TV anymore because it's just lost so much. And no disrespect to anybody, but like, you know, I left with Conan O'Brien because Conan O'Brien is kind of my spirit animal. So
his personality is fantastic, man. Honestly.
Yeah. I miss him too. Yeah, like in my dreams, my soul goes to the body of a tall white man with red hair. No, I'm kidding. But
I love that, man. But yeah, that's Stanford was incredibly fascinating. I still love that you got to see Miami kind of go through everything that they went through, especially not obviously culminating in a championship, but I mean. Yeah. Number two, I know a lot of people will say number two is the first loser, whatever, but I feel like that's a very pessimistic way of looking at things. Number two can be pretty damn good too in its own right. And I think Miami shouldn't be upset with how they performed. I think Mario Cristobal and Carson Beck broke a lot of chains that people tried to label them as. You know, they labeled Mario Cristobal as a choker, bad decision maker when the game was in clutch time, and there was many games throughout the season where he showed that he improved as a head coach. You know, same thing with Carson Beck and more of a game manager kind of guy. And there were games where he showed that he could do more than that. He surprised me even. I didn't think he was going to do as well as he did this season, and he performed fantastically, you know? So I think that was great to see. And seeing the Bill Belichick thing up front and center and seeing Jordan Hudson in the corner of a press conference room against Syracuse, just hide like in the corner, and then she pops out, and that was bizarre. I've never seen that before. But hey, man, if that's what floats his boat, good for him. Hey, who am I to judge, right? Let him without sin cast the first stone.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I feel like, man, Syracuse is another big one. So I guess that's a good way to launch into that, is because they ended up beating a Clemson team that everyone thought was very good at the time, still very good. I mean, Sweeney's a hell of a coach. That program's always going to be in fine hands as long as he's there. But Steve Angeli, first game against Tennessee, doesn't look fantastic because they lose, but he looks good. He looks like a quarterback, right? And then, we start hearing the fans say, maybe they need to bench him. Then the next, they win an easy game. And then they face UConn and have almost up until the fourth quarter of that game, fans in the media were calling for him to be benched, only for him to pull out some late game heroics and overtime win. Goes on to win 3 straight, including that Clemson game, but he gets hurt in that Clemson game. And obviously with the mix of Ricky Collins and, you know, a litany of other quarterbacks, that was a disaster in and of its own right, the way that was probably handled. And I feel like there was a couple scapegoats. We've talked about that a little bit already on this show and on yours, some of the scapegoats that were, you know, dealt with during that season. Syracuse ended up losing 8 in a row, finishing, you know, 3-8 bottom of the conference. What, I mean, you got to see it with me, obviously. What were your thoughts about just the way that season went, the loss of Angeli? We talked about it a little bit, and then, you know, what you being able to talk to the players and having conversations with them throughout the year. How was that? Did you notice an effect on the players as that season was progressing? Do you think that there was, you know, questions regarding leadership within Ricky or Fran Brown? Just what were your thoughts, and how were the players' reactions when you were able to talk to them?
Well, you know, I think I've built relationships with these guys that they can trust me. And we did have a lot of conversations off the air that, with that trust, you know, I keep to myself. And, you know, I mean, it was hard. You know, it's hard. And these guys are trying to make it to the NFL. They're trying to make their dreams come true. And, you know, they got to show NFL tape to scouts and hope that scouts see them block downfield and hope that the scouts see that they're running the right routes because they're not getting the ball. And, you know, so I think that's hard. I think it's hard for Ajante Cook the second, and I think it's hard for Dan Villari. You know, I think it's hard for Hands out there, you know, that's doing his thing, and everybody knows Daryl Gill Jr. And I mean, it was rough. You know, skill players are at the mercy of the offensive line and their quarterback, and sometimes they're at the mercy of their offensive coordinator and their head coach. And, you know, sometimes they're at the mercy of themselves. You know, they don't do what they're supposed to do. So it was hard. It was trying. I don't agree with Fran firing people in the middle of the season. I thought that was a terrible thing to do to your locker room. And I mean, unless a guy is a massive headache and just a virus, I don't think that that's the right move to make. And maybe there was, and maybe there wasn't, but you know, when he and mark my words, and I said this on my show, and I mean it, he did not change the role of Elijah Robinson or Nunzio Campanelli. He demoted them, and he lost them both, and rightly so. If I was Elijah Robinson, peace out. And Nuns, I'm telling you right now, that was a bad move by Fran. And listen, I am here to be positive, and I'm here to be constructive. I completely disagree with Fran on Nunzio Campanelli. I do. Yeah. The person he is, everything. He's at UConn now, and he's recruiting the Northeast. And he may not say it, but I'm going to say it. He's going to beat Syracuse in a lot of recruiting. And because you can't take a guy like that who has, I mean, if you're an honest, God-fearing, hardworking, moral, and value-driven guy who's also talented, or girl that's also talented, you can't fake that. And I think that was that's Fran's worst move of 2 years plus. And so I think that's gonna bite him in the butt. I really do. I hope it doesn't. I think it will. And Elijah, I mean, he's back at Texas A&M in the SEC. So, I mean, you demoted 2 people. You demoted a guy who didn't have. I mean, listen, you can't run the same offense that you run with Steve Angeli with these other quarterbacks. And I said it a million times. Ricky Collins should be running RPO, short passes to slowly but surely get his way down the field. When you saw him do little passes out, middle, out, it was working in certain games, and you have a good rushing attack. Yasin Willis is gone, and if I was Yasin, I'd be like, you didn't run me enough. And, you know, just the offense did not move correctly, and you can't punish a position coach for losing the best player at his position and then giving him players that can't run that offense. So I disagree with that. I thought that was horrible. I thought firing people and demoting people in the middle of the season made things look very bad culture-wise. And I feel bad. I feel bad for the guys. I mean, Fran's got to understand something. He didn't lose backups. He lost starters.
Yeah.
He lost Darryl Gale, who could get a shot in the NFL. He lost Jason Willis, who can get a shot in the NFL. He lost Jonte Cook II, who can get a shot in the NFL.
Yep.
And that's not a good look. And this season's going to show what it is, right? Season 1, everybody feeling great. Season 2, but adversity exposes character. Adversity shows who you are. When everything's good, it's okay. Like, you can put Band-Aids on things and people are smiling and they're giddy and they're not paying attention to the fact that they might be bleeding over here. But adversity shows you who you are. When the ship is all good and you're on the ocean and you're just floating about and it's sunny outside and there's no big waves, people are having drinks and they're hanging out and they're dancing, they're having fun. But when that ship is out in testy waters and things start getting a little bit crazy and you got to have the right person manning the ship and you're trying to get away from the waves and all of a sudden there's a bunch of holes in the ship and you got to start plugging them holes. So you got to communicate and you got to make sure that you have the resources and you have the communication to plug it so you don't drown. We didn't see that last year. That ship did not make it to shore, and that ship kept sinking. So this season, we're going to see, when this team is faced with adversity, do they start to sink again or do they float? And it's not just Steve Angeli. I mean, adversity exposes character, and that's in any situation, in any walk of life. If you want to test a romantic relationship, give it adversity. If you want to test a friendship, give it adversity. If you want to know if your family's got your back, give it adversity. If you want to know what type of boss is leading your business, give it adversity. And adversity exposed that Syracuse they had a lot of holes and not a lot of things to plug those holes with. So, now we're going to see, what did Fran do with the coaching staff? What did he do on the defensive side to lead the defense? What is Jeff Nixon going to do if adversity strikes again? Who's going to step up that's on the team? Who's going to step up that's new? Who's going to step up via the transfer portal? And we're going to see, can they plug the holes? Because this is going to be a season that's going to show that adversity either continues to show a sinking ship or they turn this thing around. But I think year 3 is going to be the year that we see who Syracuse really is in the Fran Brown era. And I hope for Fran and for everybody that they figure this thing out and they start to make some good decisions, because last season that family fell apart. And if you're a real family, you get punched in adversity, but you don't fall down forever. And they fell down and they stayed down.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, how many times did we hear Dart while they were struggling, right? We heard a lot.
I said that to you. I said there was weeks where I said Fran hasn't said Dart in multiple press conferences.
Yeah.
And then he said to me at the beginning of the season, 2 games in, that they were only doing 2 letters of Dart. So he said it, but it was 2 letters, and then he stopped saying it at all.
Right.
And I pay attention to stuff like that. And I was like,
right.
Why aren't we talking about detailed, accountable, relentless, and tough?
Yeah, literally. And that was something that, I mean, we're talking to players from last year, LaQuinn Allen, Kyle McCord, Ronde, talking to all those guys, what that was about was so big to them. Yeah. And that big to that team last year. And we didn't see that transfer happen once that team started facing the adversity you just mentioned. I mean, there were games where Yasin Willis was visibly frustrated that he wasn't getting like any touches on the ball. And that's not, a Nixon thing. That's just the way the team was. Like there was no way for any of those to get touches. I mean, talk about Dan Villari, who was one of the top tight ends in receiving yards while Steve Angeli was at quarterback. And then once he went down, that went out the window. Same thing with Jonte Cook and Darryl Gill having career years in the first quarter of the football season under Angeli, and just seeing all of those guys either leave for like Villari to the NFL draft, or as you mentioned, those other guys to the transfer portal. Those are massive losses, and how are they going to able to overcome that? Sure, Darius Booby Johnson, a guy I'm big on, he's coming in. Obviously, they have Calvin Russell coming in, the 4-star, whatever agency wants to call some of these kids. I think the star gradings are a little bit nonsensical, but that's just me. But they do have young guys, but are those young guys going to be able to, deal with that adversity that you talked about? That's going to be very fascinating to see. And the other thing that I always think about too is I've known close friends, like young athletic guys that, had D1, scholarships. I know older gentlemen friends of mine, they've torn their Achilles and it's taken them time to come back. Now, I know Steve isn't obviously the most mobile quarterback, quote unquote, but there's a chance that he might not even be 100% by week 1, so how are they going to get through that if that ends up happening? Those are all real questions that I think Fran has to address, and seeing the way he handled things like Camp Nunzio, like you talked about, and obviously his good friend Elijah, who was one of his best friends, right? Seeing the way that those relationships kind of ended and flamed out at the end of that, I don't know if that's a great precedent for what's going to happen going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all can respond better to adversity. I've had moments, my dad and I were talking today, he's like, there's moments where you have to bite your tongue. And, there's moments where you have to just kind of smile and keep it to yourself. There's not a lot of people you can trust in this world. And, sometimes you want to be honest and you want to talk about something, but you have to keep it to you. So I do want to say, and constructively looking at this season for Syracuse, Fran Brown is not the only person that's made a mistake or gone through adversity or struggled. And so I think, man to man, it's only fair to Fran if I sit here today and say, I could have been better in moments of strife. And I'm sure he would say the same thing. And I just think, you have to learn from moments. You have to learn from adversity, and you have to know, like, yeah, you're not perfect, but you are who you are most of the time. And I think that really shows when somebody goes, this isn't me. And it's like, well, I've known you for 8 months and it's been you for 7, that's you. And so, what is Fran going to do now? And how is this team going to be prepared? And what type of leader is he going to be? And I mean, this is the first time he's been a head coach. So, we're going to see who he is as a leader, and we're going to see who these coaches are, and we're going to see how they respond to adversity of not all being, there's different faces in the room now, and we're going to see with this team, who steps up. Is it a Darian Williams or a Dante Boccier of CBA? And, or is it going to be, Calvin Russell, who comes in through the transfer portal? I mean, it's all kind of up in the air. And it's funny because anybody who says to me, like, what do you think Syracuse is going to look like this year? I'm like, I'd be lying if I told you. Like, they lost a lot of guys. They lost almost 30 guys to the portal, plus guys that finished up their eligibility. So, I mean, you think about the NFL as a 53-man roster, and, you look at, like, they're losing almost a 53-man roster or something closer to that, or halfway to it, or more than halfway to it. So, I mean, we're going to see. They lost. They didn't lose just Yasin. They lost backup to you. They lost multiple backups to Yasin. They lost Jaden Hart, who had flashes in practice. They lost Malachi James, that I think is a massive mistake on their part. And so, I mean, we're talking about a Syracuse team that is hoping their quarterback's healthy, lost their starting running back, lost their backup running backs, lost their kick returner, punt returner, lost multiple starting wide receivers, lost their starting tight end. They've lost their entire offensive skill player unit for the most part that was starting last year. And then you have to hope that Steve Angeli can be healthy for a whole season. So, I mean, that's tough. And if Steve Angeli was healthy and other schools came calling and he's not going through a torn Achilles, do they have Steve? And I'm not speaking to Steve's character at all in that. I'm just saying, if you're a quarterback and you see that almost your entire room of toys is gone, what keeps you here if you're healthy?
Right.
So, I mean, that's another part of it. So, I mean, and listen, Steve's a great guy and he's a leader to me, and I love talking with him off the air, on the air. We have been building a really good relationship. So when he went down, that hit me some kind of way. And, you know, I mean, and then defensively, you know, there's guys that have moved on, there's guys that finished up. I mean, Antoine Delorier is the best part of that defense right now. And
Yeah.
Derek McDonald's in North Carolina with Bill Belichick right now. I mean, who would have thought that was going to happen? And Deuce Chestnut's done, and they played him out of position for 2 years, in my opinion. So, I mean, you're looking at a Syracuse team that has lost defensive leadership, lost almost all of their starting skill players on offense, hoping that their quarterback is coming back that we only saw for 4 games in orange and blue. And they don't know who's going to kick return and punt return for them. So we're talking about almost an entirely new team going into this season. So who in their right mind can tell you what that team's going to be right now?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to say the least. And I'm so intrigued to see what happens, especially with the quarterback position, because Steve looked so good when he was given full reign of the offense. And then, like I talked about, you know, some guys don't necessarily come back so quickly after an Achilles. So I'm hoping for the best for him because he is a fantastic kid. He's a very nice kid. And he's also a great ball player. So he'd be great, just not for Syracuse, but for him personally, to see him enter the season healthy. But if he's not healthy, what kind of contingency plan does Syracuse have behind that? I know they brought in some quarterbacks with actual starting experience, which was another issue probably from last year that they didn't necessarily address until they got Steve, who I think had the most snaps in college football in that quarterback room, if I'm not mistaken, last year, which wasn't much because he only played in a handful of games while he was, with Notre Dame. So I'm very fascinated to see how that goes. But I do want to get off Syracuse a little bit because I do want to talk to you about another big, very massive addition in the ACC, and that's actually with Virginia Tech, because obviously Virginia Tech now has James Franklin. They fired Brent Pry, who returns as one of their coordinators.
Which as Willie returns to my studio, yes.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I didn't expect. I mean, if that doesn't speak volumes about just the chemistry that those guys have and the culture already kind of getting established within that area and on that team. If that doesn't speak for that, I don't know what could. But what are your thoughts about the hire of James Franklin and the potential expectations for Virginia Tech entering 2026?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm excited, and I've been thinking about. It's weird that you asked me this because I've been thinking about it recently. That I feel like, you know, Virginia Tech is trending upward. And I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I got to be around James Franklin at Penn State a couple of years ago when he brought them to their first ever college football playoff, won their first ever college football playoff game in the first year of the 12-team playoff, in the first year where there were first-round games on campus, where they had over 100,000 fans there. And it was absolutely insane at Beaver Stadium. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, not just for football, but in anything when it comes to the sports world. And it was his 100th career win. So like a million things happened that day. And then I was in the room with him and I got to talk with him and I felt the energy from him. And I sat in and it's weird. Like if you go to Penn State and you sit in their press conference room, they have a second floor where like other people can watch. And then you're sitting in like this classroom and you're sitting at like a desk that you would sit at in like high school. And so I can say that while I was sitting there in that room with James Franklin, and I believe in palpable things and I believe in being in rooms, and I'm grateful to God that he's allowed me to be in a lot of them because I feel like there's something to that just it adds to my ability to describe a team and a person and a story and an organization. You know, I can talk about Jacksonville's locker room without even being in it now because like I had so many years in the locker room that I said things. And when Doug Peterson was in his last year, I said things and then he would say it like 3 weeks later. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And so I would say sitting in the room with James Franklin and having the opportunity to talk with him, I get it. Like I get why people like him. And it's palpable. The room was palpable. his leadership was palpable. His essence, his energy. And all I can say to you is from being in that room with him and being around him in that time period, I looked around Penn State. I experienced the game. I experienced the fans. I sat in that room. I looked at him. I heard him speak. And I thought, I get it now. And and he brings I get it now to Virginia Tech, to Blacksburg. And danger is what I would say to anybody that's on the Hokie schedule. I mean, this may not be an overnight thing, but I trust my gut. And my vibe is that James Franklin is going to turn Virginia Tech into a menace. And I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, and I think it speaks volumes about, I mean, you said, you get why people like him, and I think it spoke volumes that we didn't see just Penn State players end up transferring to Virginia Tech, but we saw a lot of recruits end up being like, well, hey, I want to go to Virginia Tech now instead of Penn State. And I think that, I mean, obviously Penn State, I've talked about this earlier on the show, Penn State in a not so roundabout way ended up making a good hire of their own. But I think that it also speaks volumes about just James Franklin and his leadership ability and his recruiting ability, that he was able to drag a lot of high-profile players over with him to the Hokies. And in a conference that can be as chaotic as the ACC, that, like you said, danger is a great keyword to use, because that's a team that can go from bottom 5 to top 5 pretty quickly under the right circumstances, right? So I think that's going to be very fascinating. And I mean, talked about kept keeping Brent as defensive coordinator. That's just that's one of the other things that I haven't really seen have happen. I know you talked about that before with Frank Reich, obviously as the interim with Stanford. But I haven't seen a coach get fired and be like, well, you know what? The new head coach comes in. He's like, hey, I'm going to keep you on as the defensive coordinator. I thought that was pretty cool because he's a great recruiting aspect in the Mid-Atlantic area as well. So I do think that's fascinating. I mean, one last thing, kind of before I get you out, I do want to talk about Wake Forest too. I know I'm kind of throwing you all over the
I do want to say something
here.
really quick about Brent Pry, though.
Yeah.
To everybody that booed him coming out of the tunnel, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to be like this?
Yeah.
Is he looking at me right now? Is he still out here?
And Brent just be like that. Because when he left, they're like, good riddance. And then James Franklin was like, guess who's going to run my defense? And so I was just like, damn. And I mean, I listen, I think it's cool. I think it's awesome. And I hope that Brent Pry has the best chapter of his life right now on and off the field, because, this is like the biggest, G moment to walk out there and have boo. And then they walk out and he's like, you know what I mean? So, what are you going to say? Like, what are you going to say when James Franklin's like, man, I'm so happy I have Brent Pry on my staff because he helped me get, these 12 guys on my defense. Like, I think, like you said, we saw the interim thing with Frank Reich. We've never seen that before. And then we see this where it's like head coach fired, bring in James Franklin. He brings back the coach that was just fired to work under him. And I also think it says something about James Franklin to be like, hey, the guy that ran this entire team that like could go against me and combat me, and head coaches don't always work well on the same staff. He was like, I welcome that adversity because he sees something in Brent Pry that he thinks is worth it. And I think that it speaks to the strength and character of James Franklin, and maybe James Franklin. And this is just me from the outside looking in, he got spurned unfairly and Brent got spurned as well. So maybe this is his thing. Like, hey, God will set my table in front of my enemies. Why not set a place next to me for Brent Pry?
Yeah, I think that was fantastic. I personally loved it. I thought it was great because I'm a big fan of Coach Brent Pry too. He's a very nice guy. But I did want to talk to you probably one of the bigger surprises in the conference too, and how they performed, at least from a win-loss perspective. And that was Wake Forest and their first year head coach Jake Dickert. Well, first year in the ACC for head coach for Jake Dickert, who came in from Washington State, brought a lot of people over with him, and they ended up going 9-4. Wasn't always pretty. The SMU game is probably a testament to that. That was a very slugfesty kind of game with a lot of turnovers and a lot of just incredible defensive play. But they got the job done, and they performed. They proved a lot of doubters wrong. So what are your thoughts about just how that coaching staff performed and their ability to kind of, I guess, prove the naysayers wrong?
Yeah, I mean, Wake Forest has been such an interesting thing because when a few years ago, I brought one of my interns with me and JT Molo, and he came with me and was taking pictures and whatnot. And they were doing like an all North Carolina thing. So they had NC State, Wake Forest, Duke, and North Carolina. And he overheard somebody in the media talking. And the guy was like, "Oh, we're going to get North Carolina pictures." He's like, "Oh yeah, like make sure you get this team and this team." And he's like, "Do you want me to get Wake Forest?" And he's like, "If there's time." And I was like, "Why do they treat them like that?" You know, Dave Clawson brought them out of the basement, and Dave Clawson put them in a place where, I mean, they were at the top 2 or 3 in the ACC multiple times in Dave Clawson's final few years. And by the way, Dave Clawson helped to bring up Sam Hartman, who Notre Dame stole in the transfer portal. So, like, you can't even blame Wake Forest for that last year where it's like, hey, we got this guy that's been in our program forever, and now that he's trained and seasoned and has knowledge and wisdom and experience, oh, he's going to Notre Dame. So, I mean, and Notre Dame should really thank the ACC for being their farm system for Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard, and who came from Duke. And so, you know, I mean, and that's not a dig. That's credit to those two guys working their tail off that Notre Dame wanted them. But I'm just saying, Notre Dame didn't find those guys. Wake Forest found Sam Hartman, and Duke found Riley Leonard. By the way, Riley Leonard was choosing between Duke and Syracuse, coming from his home state of Alabama, and he chose Duke over Syracuse, which I agreed with because David Cutcliffe was there, who's a quarterback guru. And then people asked me why I continued to interview Riley Leonard, and I said because I care about people, not where they go. And the fact that Riley Leonard and I still talk to this day, and my godson he opened his first ever football pack of cards that had an autograph, and the first autograph he's ever pulled in his life was Riley Leonard, was one of the craziest full circle moments of my life. And I was like, you don't need that. You don't know who he is. Give it to your uncle. But, you know, I mean, he kept it. I'm lying. I didn't take it. But I love you, Noah. And, yeah, I mean, I think with Jake Dicker, my long-winded thing was Dave Clawson built something in Wake Forest that didn't get the respect that it deserved. And then I would tell Dave to his face, like, I defend you all the time, Dave, just so you know, because you deserve it. And I tell that to Dave Doran. I'm like, I don't care what people think of me because I know how I feel about what you guys have done. And I also said if they had given Scott Schaefer, who was hired around the same time, the time at Syracuse, I think Scott could have done a lot of good things. And yeah, so I mean, Jake Dickert, he kept Wake Forest going. And, you know, it's funny. Teams would lose to Wake Forest in the ACC this year, and they'd be like, oh, well, they're out of the college football playoff, and they suck, and this. And I was like, Wake Forest, Wake Forest is a phenomenal, like, you're treating Wake Forest like they're a 3-win team when, like, it was the opposite. And I just found it wild that if you lost to Wake Forest, you were a crappy team. And I was like, but Wake Forest is better than a ton of the teams that these Autonomy 4 conferences are like winning games over, and they're like glorifying them. Like you beat Maryland. Maryland's not good. You beat everybody that beat Purdue in the Big Ten was like a giant. Purdue didn't win a game in the Big Ten this year. They went, Michigan State was bad. I mean, you look at all these Michigan beat nobody. And they were like, should we put them in the top 15? And I was like, are you on drugs right now? Like, I mean, Wake Forest didn't get to sniff anything this year. And if you lost to Wake Forest, you were considered like a bottom dweller, which I think is hilarious because for some odd reason, Wake Forest is treated like a bad team, but they win and they don't play spoiler. They're a good team. And so, I mean, my long-winded response to you about Wake Forest is I respected them years ago. I defended Dave Clawson farther back than I can even remember. I had an apartment. So put it to you like this. I have a home now. It's going to be 10 years in my home in May. I was defending him before I got this house. So love you, Dave. And and then Jake Dickert, I was like, I don't know what it's going to be. I hope the best. I was really pissed off that Dave Clawson was gone. I was like, well, this sucks because I'm a big fan and I think he does a great job. And he, oh my gosh, if anybody could pick apart Syracuse at halftime, that man was a wizard. So he was like, move over, Harry Potter. I got this dragon. But like, I like Jake Dickert and I think he's doing a great job. And I think Wake Forest has been good for many years. And I find it to be hilarious that nobody, like, they treat Wake like this little brother that people beat up on, but they are beating up on other people. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand what else Wake Forest has to do to, like, a few years ago, if they had a good last 2 weeks of the season, they like should have been they, like in the 4-team college football playoff, they had a case. And I said it, I was like, they're never going to put them in. And they're like, well, Dan, if they go on, I was like, it doesn't matter. They're never going to put them in. They're not going to put them in. It's too small of a school, because people don't understand that rankings are subjective. And so it doesn't matter everything you do, which is why I'm against the Big Ten's 2014 model, which is based like wholeheartedly on rankings. Yeah. It gets rid of conference champions. It's wild. But yeah, I love what Jake's done. I still miss Dave Clawson. I'm going to do everything in my power to get Dave back on my show, because he's just wonderful, and I think he deserves his flowers. But I'm looking forward to Wake Forest continuing to win games, and maybe someday the national media, which I am a part of, maybe my cohorts and peers will just maybe. I know it might hurt because the narrative that they've spewed for so long was wrong, but maybe they can take the word vomit, hold it in, swallow it, and then just say Wake Forest is not a bad team.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, because how many times can they play spoiler before another team's playing spoiler for them, right? Like how many slugfists did they get into? And the crowded booth comes in. Dickert was impressive, retained a lot of that staff too. He did, and he ended up bringing over good staff over from Washington State. He brought in some players too. I actually got to talk to Falui Famoy, one of the offensive tackles there at the Shrine Bowl, and he, like, those kids and those athletes, they saw those comments too. It wasn't just, something that the media was saying. And we already know this. A lot of these athletes, they know what's being said about not just them, but the programs in and of itself. And talking to Faluli at the Shrine Bowl, he told me that was one of the biggest things that he was proud of this past season, was being able to prove the doubters wrong, because you were at that ACC kickoff media event just like I was. Wake Forest finished in the bottom 5 of the 2025 projections, and they ended up finishing with a 9-4 record, which many people didn't see coming. I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily see that coming, and I'm happy that it did, because it helped fuel the fire for those kids, and it just showed that Dickert was not only just the right guy for the program, but the right guy for continuity with that program going forward. He retained the right people on that staff. He's done a great job through the recruiting aspects and through getting the correct people in the transfer portal. That offense had limitations at the quarterback position, and he was able to navigate those and keep them into games with elite teams. I know people sleep on SMU because it's, an American team that's now in the, ACC, and I know how you feel about that, but I feel the same way, by the way. Brett Lashley's a great coach, and that's a great program.
You want me to sound just go off. You want me to sound, see, when I can't with the SMU, I can't like, okay, again, it's why create a narrative with no base? Yeah. Like, I don't form opinions if I can't back it up, because then you look stupid. And so SMU was good in the American.
Yeah.
They're good in the ACC. A last-second field goal kept them from winning an ACC title game in their first year in the conference, and they were one loss away from going back again. And, I don't – if you talk to the caliber of human being at SMU, and you talk to the coaching staff, and you talk to Rhett Lashley, and you talk to the support staff, and you watch the team, Only someone who is holding on to a narrative, hoping to God that nobody fact checks them, would say that SMU is a bad team. But it's like, I don't go into the season with narratives. I go into the season with what's in front of me, and then I watch things develop. Like I can tell you right now, watch this, clip this, and keep it until the beginning of next season. Tell you this right now. There will be 3 Big Ten teams ranked in the top 10 to start the season. Notre Dame will be ranked in the top 10 to start the season. The SEC will have at least probably Alabama and Georgia in the top 10 to start the season. I'm telling you right now. Write it down. Like Michigan could be like they had a coach in a scandal and they won a championship and they didn't have to give up the championship while being investigated. Then they had the coach take over who was in a scandal, who now doesn't have the job. And they're like, hey, Michigan's going to win a championship every year. Like, I mean, it's so wild. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make, maybe Syracuse should get investigated more. I don't know what's going to take. I mean, maybe that helps. I have no idea. But like, I mean, I'm kidding. But like, it's just wild. I can write on a piece of paper, fold it, put it in my studio, and say, I'm confident that this is your top 10. And then you'll look at it and you'll be like, holy shit, it was one off. Sorry, I swore. But like, I just, you know my buttons. And SMU is one of my buttons where I'm just like, it's not their fault. So like, I mean, it's just, I don't know what Wake has to do. I don't know what Georgia Tech has to do. I don't know what SMU has to do. I don't know what Miami how many people were saying Miami should be out of the college football playoff and the spot should be taken by the team that they beat? Like, what does Miami have to do? Like, you ever have a conversation with somebody and you're going back and forth and you disagree and you're like, hey, we're going to have a calm conversation. And as long as you don't swear and I don't swear, we can talk to each other, right? We're not going to, as long as we don't personally attack each other, like we can have a conversation. But when you realize that they are going to hold on to what they believe in, even when it no longer makes sense, you have to walk away. And I had to walk away from hundreds of Notre Dame fans that thought I was the biggest moron ever in the history of mankind. And my response to them was, I love your team. I respect your school. I am friends with people that played there. I enjoy covering the team, but it's not about what I like, and it's not about who I like talking to. It's about this season alone, and this season alone, you don't have an argument. Win the games. You played a crap schedule, and then you lost to 2 good teams. And guess what? Their schedule this season is the same. It's like mostly teams are going to – they're playing 3 Big Ten teams that Notre Dame could play like if they put 5 guys on the field. And so like, I mean, it's just, and look at, what did I just say about you, Notre Dame? I said half of the guys on the field and you're still more talented. So like, I'm giving you credit, but play a tougher schedule. And I mean, just push yourself.
That's all we're asking.
But SMU, like, I can't. I get Sebastian Maniscalco-esque when people ask me questions about things that make no sense because of narratives that were made up by people that will not admit that they're wrong. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But like, when I get mad, I get more Italian. And the Sebastian Maniscalco, I'm going to start getting up and moving my body around and starting to get a little louder. I mean, it's just how I am when I get put in these situations, because on Valentine's Day, I wore red. And part of my heart was like, this is for you, SMU, because you don't get enough love. So, I mean, they don't.
Oh, man.
So, to the Mustangs, to the city of Dallas, and to the state of Texas, I love you. I support you. I hope the best for you. And I know that you're doing a good job. And to Wake Forest and Winston-Salem, I know you're doing a good job. And to Georgia Tech and Atlanta, I know you're doing a good job. And if nobody and Virginia in Charlottesville, I know you're doing a good job. So for all of those that don't want to talk about you and want to push the narratives that you suck before you play a game, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lean on facts. And I'm going to support the people that are working their tail off and doing a great job. And I'm not going to be quiet about the schools that are kicking butt out there. And I think it's a sin that people pushing narratives when they end up being wrong can't go to a podium or to a microphone or to a teleprompter and, maybe go off script and just say Virginia, SMU, Duke, Georgia Tech, Miami, maybe they deserve a little bit more support. Wake Forest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of speaks. I mean, I know there's a big mantra of the SEC and the Big Ten just being leaps and bounds better, but I think the ACC deserves a lot more. I mean, we just saw Miami in the national title game, for God's goodness sake. You know what I mean? I think that being competitive shouldn't be a detriment to the conference as a whole, because that conference is an incredibly competitive conference. We talked about the chaotic nature of that, how it could play out, and it managed to play out that way. You predicted it completely, along with Shane, when we made those guesses for the playoff, which was awesome. Shane. Hilarious to see.
Can I apologize, Shane, if you're watching and listening? That we playfully banter back and forth, but I love Shane. So I want Shane to know that, because it's all jokes, but literally I've known Shane for 5 minutes. And if I saw him today, I give him a big hug. I tell his wife that he's a fantastic human being. And I already feel like he's a good father without me even sitting there with him. So as much as we joke here on the show, and you can joke with the people that you care about, I absolutely, genuinely respect Shane. I appreciate him. I love our conversations. And I think you can only joke with people that you care about. So just know that I joke so much with Shane because he's easy to care for. I think he's a really good guy, and I'm happy that he's on your team. And I just, Shane, I think you're wonderful. And I said all those kind of things, even though you've stiffed us twice. So I love you dearly.
Yeah, I was waiting for another goalish. I was waiting for a goalish punchline at the end.
I tried so hard to not do it, because I'm like, you're being nice, and you're being nice, and you're being nice, and you're being nice, and you said nice things,
and then just pulled the brag out.
And I had to just keep myself from saying, I called up goalish and I smoothed it over, but he really suggested that you don't send him messages that his new furniture in the living room looks great from the front lawn. You have to stop telling him those things.
Shane. Come on, Shane. I mean, it's a longer drive now, but still.
Where's Shane? Is his computer still loading? Where has he been?
I don't know. I think he's East Coast now. Before he was in that central time zone, so now it's an hour later for him. So I think it might interrupt that. I think he has a dinner date with the wife on Tuesdays now at nighttime, and we're kind of interrupting that. I have to start the show earlier.
I think that we should call him. I think we should put him on video during his dinner date.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we should have that whole dynamic. So
great.
I think it would be nice just for a little while. I don't want to ruin the date at all, but I don't know. I have a feeling that his wife has a sense of humor because he has a sense of humor. So I just have a feeling we could have, or you and I do this. We make a movie about a buddy comedy, and we go to his address and we tell him nothing, and we show up with all the equipment, and we broadcast the show live from his house with his children and him and his wife eating in the background.
That would be fantastic. We'd have to live stream that entire thing. That the whole trip down. He'd have no idea.
The entire trip, just clips of me going, do you think he knows? And you going, I don't think he knows. And then it clips to us singing a country song. Then it clips to us talking about how can they rank teams this way. And then it clips back to singing another song, but it's like Britney Spears. Then it clips back to should we have done this? I don't know. And we're second guessing ourselves. And then all of a sudden we show up at the house. So I want to do it now. Shane, I hope you're not listening. I really do, because
that would be a hilarious surprise. Honestly, it wouldn't be that out of the realm of possibilities. ACC kickoff weekend this year. I think he's only a stone's throw down from where we'll be at in Charlotte.
I think we should just call it Finding Shane.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Or we could call it. We could call it Shane Barrett: The Untold Story of Alex Golesh.
Just have random cameos of Alex Golesh.
I
and all
cannot
of
wait
us.
for Alex to be for him to go, who is this Shane guy that you talk about? And I got to bring it up to him. I really do.
If you do that, I think he would lose his mind completely. Honestly,
I got to be like, Alex, I just want you to know, like, no, because I've known him for a long time. And when he was at South Florida, he sent me like a nice little care package. I want to be like, hey, can I get some Auburn gear? But can you sign one of the things for my buddy Shane?
that would honestly, I think Shane would lose his mind, and I don't know if he would know what to do if that happened. That'd be a nice little present for him. Got to find out when Shane's birthday is. But then before I get you out of here, I mean, this has been fun, man. I wish I might have to start the show like an hour earlier or something because this is fun stuff. But before I get you out of here, brother, let everybody know where they can find you at on your social media and everything.
You can find me easier than Shane. I am on Wake Up Call Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time worldwide. We're on youtube.com and facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT. And we're on live internet streaming radio, and that's wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. And there's over 2,000 episodes on that same link to Podbean. You can also search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora or Wake Up Call DT on your favorite podcasting platform, and you can find our audio. And like I said, over 2,000 shows. Facebook is at Wake Up Call DT. X is at Call DT. Instagram is at WakeUpCall_DT. And if you forget it all, it's all on wakeupcalldt.com. And tomorrow morning, Rob Conrad, the last to wear 44 at Syracuse, will join me to talk about his letter sent to Syracuse University's Board of Trustees in their search for the next athletic director. He will be spending time with me tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time, breaking down the search for the new leader of Syracuse athletics. And I would suggest you don't miss that.
Oh, that'd be sick. I'm going to tune in for that. I appreciate you so much for coming on, man. It's always a freaking blast to have you on, Dan. Thank you so much for taking the time out, brother. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, and when I'm not available to go somewhere, my placeholder for myself, if I have to be in two places at once, is a picture of Shane Barrett, and I actually put him down at a table, a cardboard cutout of him, and but I use my voice, so it stuns people because they hear me, but they see Shane, because I think that, you know, if I could ever create a nice mashup, it would be Shane's face, my voice. I think that the world needs that. So Shane, I miss you. And, you know, I just feel like if I say your name enough times, you'll appear. Not like Bloody Mary, but like the opposite of that. So I miss you, Shane. And I hope that you'll come back soon. I don't know what Thomas did to upset you, but, you know, I hope that we can patch things up. But thanks as always to you. And I appreciate you, Thomas. Appreciate the team at the League Winners. And I like laughing. So thank you for talking sports, having fun, and for being one of the best people in the media. And having a big heart. So don't ever lose that. And your daughter's got a good dad. So just know that.
Oh, dude, I appreciate the kind words. First time listeners are going to be like, why are these guys obsessed with this guy named Shane? And it's going to be, I'm like, go listen to the past episodes. Just listen to the past episodes.
I have a promise to you, Shane. This is what I'll leave you all with. If you don't show up within the next month, I'm going to go to my t-shirt guy, and I'm going to put your face on a t-shirt, and I'm going to wear it in an episode, and I get to pick the quote. I'm just saying.
I can't wait for that. I mean, I might tell him not. I might tell him not to come on the show for a month now, just to see what the.
I'm just saying.
That'd be fantastic. Oh man, Daniel, thank you so much. Dude, this has been fun. I'll catch you later, brother.
All right, man. Have a good night.
That is Dan Tortora. You can find him at Call DT, Wake Up Call Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. He runs a little bit after that. Great guy, been in the media business for over 20 years as a broadcaster, 22 years as a broadcaster, covers the Syracuse Orange, and does a lot of college football stuff and stuff in Western New York as well. Make sure to give him a follow at Call, the letter D, the letter T, on X/Twitter. If you're watching this show for the first time, make sure to leave that like button. It's completely free to do so. It takes about 5 seconds. This is a live show, so if you do comment, we do get to them. If you comment after the show has ended, give me 24, 48 hours, and I'll get back to you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button if you like what you're seeing. We talk a lot of college football from the League Winners every Tuesday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. If you're watching on X/Twitter, make sure to hit that like button, that retweet button. Leave a comment there as well if you care to do so. If you're watching on Facebook, same thing applies. Click that like button. Feel free to comment or feel free to share the video. I do appreciate everybody so much for checking in. Shout out to Brandyn Pokrass and shout out to Dan Tortora for today's episode. It's fantastic talking ACC college football. And until next time, make sure you guys can follow me on my own X/Twitter at TommyCFB. Talk college football every day here at the League Winners. With that said, this is Thomas Christopher, and this is the College Football Now Show, and we are signing.